Before I tell you what happened at that wedding, I need you to picture one thing. Picture the most beautiful house you have ever seen. Not a house, a mansion. White stone walls. A garden so perfect it looked like someone had painted it. Roses in every corner, red and white and cream, all blooming at once like they had been given a single instruction. 300 guests moved through marble hallways in silk and pearls, laughing, filling every room with perfume and money.
Welcome to the Continental, sir. Right this way.
Thank you kindly.
Now picture yourself in that same space, but not as a guest. Picture yourself in the gray uniform, flat shoes, a name tag showing only your first name, as if your last name does not belong there. Picture carrying a tray through rooms you are not allowed to stand still in, smiling at people who look right through you like you are made of air. That was me. Every Saturday for 8 months. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was just passing through. What I did not know was that the most dangerous man at that wedding was not standing in the garden with the other guests. He was standing at the service entrance, the same door they had made me use since day one. My name is Zara Mensah. I am 31 years old, and for 8 months I worked as a household attendant for a wealthy family in Busan, South Korea. That is the polite version. The honest version is that I cleaned bathrooms, pressed tablecloths, carried things from room to room, and smiled while doing it because smiling was in the job description. I came to Korea on a work visa after 2 years of trying to rebuild something I had lost back home in Accra. I had a degree in hospitality management, 3 years coordinating events for one of Ghana's largest hotels, a whole life that was mine. Then a business partner I trusted took everything. My savings, my reputation, the event company I had built from nothing, and left me holding debt I could not explain without watching people's faces change. So I packed what I could. I found a placement agency. I took the job. I told myself it was temporary. That word is a comfortable lie. I had been telling it for 8 months when the family's daughter announced her wedding. The mother looked at me across the kitchen and said the words that started everything. You will help with the event, but you will use the service entrance at all times. Let me tell you about the mother, because without this, the rest will not make the sense it needs to. She was a small woman who took up a lot of space. Not physically, she was thin and precise, the kind of person who had spent decades deciding exactly how much of herself to show the world. She wore her hair in a low knot every single day. She had a way of entering a room that made the room feel like it had been waiting for her. She was not cruel in the way that makes noise. She was cruel in the quiet way that leaves no marks. In 8 months, she never once asked how I was. She used my name only when she needed something, in the flat tone people use for appliances. She had a daughter she adored, a husband she managed carefully, and a social life she curated like a museum collection. What she had decided about me was that I was furniture. Useful furniture, well-maintained, but furniture all the same. The service entrance instruction was not new, but saying it again before her daughter's wedding, looking me in the eye while she said it, felt different that time. It felt like a reminder being pressed into something soft. The wedding was on a Saturday in April. The estate sat on a hill above Busan harbor, and that morning the whole city spread below us like something generous had arranged it specifically for the occasion. Caterers arrived at 6, florists at 7. The event coordinator, a sharp woman named Ji-Hae, who always moved 5 minutes ahead of everyone else, arrived at 7:15 and began reorganizing things that did not need reorganizing. I had been there since 5:30. I pressed 12 tablecloths. I polished 48 champagne flutes. I carried 4 boxes of flower arrangements from the delivery van because the florist's assistant had twisted his ankle on the uneven path, and there was nobody else. I did all of this through the service entrance, a narrow door on the left side of the estate, half hidden by a row of hedges, opening into a gray corridor that smelled of cleaning products and cold stone. It was not ugly. It was just separate. It was the door that said your work is wanted here, but you are not. By 9 the garden was ready. White chairs in perfect rows, a wisteria canopy over the ceremony arch, tables set with enough crystal to blind you if the light caught wrong. I looked at all of it for 30 seconds. Guests began arriving at 11. I watched from the places I was allowed, the corridor window, the gap in the garden hedge where the catering team staged their trays. They came in expensive cars and expensive clothes, the women in pastels, the men in dark suits, all moving with the easy confidence of people who have never once thought about which entrance to use. I carried trays. I refilled glasses. I moved through the edges of the crowd in my gray uniform, and not one person looked at me the way you look at another person. They looked at the tray. They took what they needed. I moved on. It is a specific kind of invisible. That one. Not the invisible of being overlooked. The invisible of being seen as a function rather than a face. I had gotten used to it in 8 months. That is the thing nobody tells you about getting used to something painful. You do not stop feeling it. You just stop being surprised. And somewhere, quietly, you begin to believe it. That morning, before I understood what was coming, I had started to believe what the mother had decided about me. I was carrying it the way you carry something so long it stops feeling like a weight. The moment I need to tell you about happened at 11:47. I know the exact time because I had just checked my watch. I was moving back through the service corridor with an empty tray when the service entrance door opened from outside. I stopped. This was not one of us. The man who stepped through was tall, wearing a dark suit that fit like it had been made specifically for his body. His hair was dark and cut close. He was Korean, somewhere in his late 30s, and he moved through that gray corridor with the exact same ease that the garden guests moved through the marble hallways. Like the space had no power over him at all. He saw me. He stopped. He said something in Korean, then switched to English without pausing. Is there a faster way to the garden from here? I stared at him for 2 full seconds. Why are you using this entrance? I said. It was not a polite question. He looked at me with a slight tilt of his head, because he said simply, the front was taking too long. He said it the way someone says something obvious, not embarrassed. Not performing anything. His name was Kang Jae-Won. I did not know that yet. What I knew in that corridor, in those first 30 seconds, was 3 things. 1. He was not staff. His suit alone cost more than my monthly salary. 2. He was not embarrassed to be standing in a service corridor. 3. He was looking at me in a way that almost nobody in that house had looked at me in 8 months. Not at the tray. Not through me. At me. Like I was a full person existing in the room, rather than a function being performed in one. I showed him the faster route to the garden. He thanked me by name, which startled me because I had not told him my name, and then walked out into the sunlight and disappeared into the crowd. I stood in the corridor a moment longer than I needed to. Then Ji-Hai's voice crackled through the radio on the counter. Zara. The sparkling water. Now. I picked up my tray and went. But something had shifted, quietly, in the part of my chest where I kept the things I did not examine too closely. A small door had opened somewhere inside me. I did not have a name for what had come through it. The ceremony began at noon, under the wisteria canopy. The bride was beautiful in the way of a woman carefully prepared for a moment she had been building toward for years. Her dress was white lace with a long train managed by 2 small cousins. Her groom, Park Sung-ho, watched her walk toward him with the expression of someone who genuinely could not believe his own luck. The most honest thing a groom can show. I watched from the staff area near the catering tent, far enough from the guests to stay out of the photographs. The mother sat front row in a champagne-colored dress, back perfectly straight. The composed expression of a woman whose plan was going exactly as intended. She did not look toward us. I had learned that was its own kind of message. I found myself scanning the crowd, looking for the man from the corridor. I found him 3 rows from the back. He was not watching the ceremony. He held something carefully in his hand at an angle that looked deliberate. His face was still. Not bored. Something more purposeful. The kind of stillness that belongs to a person who already knows how things end and is simply waiting for the story to arrive at the page he has already turned. The reception moved to the main garden terrace after the ceremony. Long tables under warm strings of light. A band playing something smooth that filled the space without demanding attention. Exactly what reception music is designed to do. I was stationed at the beverage table on the left, which meant I stayed in one place long enough to watch the room properly for the first time all day. What I noticed was this. Kang Jae-Won moved through the crowd differently from every other guest. Not loudly, not with ceremony, but when he passed, the room reorganized subtly around him. A city official I recognized from the news left a conversation mid-sentence and moved to cross Jae-Won's path, offering a handshake with a slight bow. A businessman I had seen in the family's hallway photographs adjusted his posture when Jae-Won came near. A senior woman touched her husband's arm and said something quiet. These were not small adjustments. These were the movements of a room that understood precisely who it was standing near and was quietly acknowledging that fact without making a performance of it. Power that requires no announcement is a completely different thing from power that performs itself. I had seen both kinds in the event world back in Accra. The mother noticed him at the same time I did. I saw it happen. She was speaking to two women in pastel dresses when something shifted at the edge of her vision, and she turned, just slightly, toward the far side of the terrace. Her expression did not change, but her spine stiffened in a way different from her usual controlled posture. This was recognition followed immediately by calculation. She excused herself in the smooth way of someone who has managed social rooms for 30 years and crossed toward him. I watched her reach him. He turned when she approached and greeted her with the courtesy of someone being polite without being warm. She spoke. He replied briefly. She smiled with her mouth only. He did not smile at all. 3 minutes later, she was back in her original conversation, expression restored, posture correct. But something in her shoulders was different. Tighter. Like she had walked toward something expecting a certain amount of space and found less of it than she had planned for. I refilled a glass and did not allow myself to think too carefully about what I had just witnessed. But I kept it. I filed it in the quiet place where I stored things that might matter later. The moment that changed everything happened at 2:15. I had been asked to bring bread rolls to the main family table at the center of the terrace, the one arranged so everyone at the reception could see who sat at it. I came from the left with the basket, moving carefully over the uneven stones. I was almost at the table when the mother looked up and saw me. Without lowering her voice, without any awareness of the people beside her, she turned to the woman on her right and said, "The agency sent us a good girl. She is very diligent. It is hard to find Africans who work this hard without needing constant supervision." The woman made a small agreeable sound. The man on her left said nothing. I set the bread basket down. I straightened up. I looked at the mother. She was already looking away. She had not watched to see if her words landed, because she did not consider that they had gone anywhere except into the agreement of people who thought exactly like she did. I turned to walk back, and I saw Kang Jae-Won. He was 4 feet away. He had heard every word. I went back to the catering tent. I put the empty tray down. I stood with my hands flat on the counter and breathed. Not because I was about to cry. I was past that response to that kind of moment. But because my body needed somewhere to put what had just happened, and the counter was the nearest solid thing. Nana, the other attendant from the agency, appeared at my elbow. She was 24 and from Kumasi, and had been with the family only 3 months, which meant she still had the face of someone counting down to something better. She did not say anything. She just stood close in the way that women do when they understand without being told that standing close is the right thing. After a moment, I picked up a fresh tray and went back out. This is what you learn when you have been carrying hard things long enough. The body keeps moving even when everything inside has gone very quiet. It is not strength exactly. It is more like the habit of surviving. You keep going because stopping costs more than continuing, and because somewhere in the back of everything, even on the worst days, you still believe the story is not finished yet. Kang Jae-Won found me at the beverage table at 2:32. I know the exact time because I checked my watch the moment I saw him walking toward me. Direct, unhurried, the movement of someone who has already decided what to do and is simply doing it. He stopped at the right distance, not too close. "I want to ask you something," he said. "You can say no." I looked at him. "What is the question?" How long have you been working here? 8 months. He was quiet, not the uncomfortable quiet of someone who has run out of words, the considered quiet of someone choosing them carefully. Before this, he said, "What did you do?" I told him the full version, the hotel in Accra, the event company, the business partner, the visa, the agency. He listened the way almost nobody listens, not waiting to respond, but following each sentence to its end before moving to the next. When I finished, he said, "I would like to give you a card. You do not have to do anything with it, but I would like you to call the number tomorrow." He placed the card on the edge of the table, not in my hand, on the table, so the choice was entirely mine.
Some moments don't ask for attention, they take it.
May I have your attention?
I picked up the card after he'd gone 3 steps, thick cream cardstock, a name and a number, and nothing else. Kang Jae-Won. Below the name, in smaller letters, KJW Group. I knew that name. Everyone in Busan knew it the way you know the name of a mountain, not because you have been there, but because it is always visible on the horizon. KJW Group was hospitality, real estate, private security, and other businesses that appeared in financial newspapers in the language of scale without specifics. One of those companies whose owner does not need to explain what it does because the city already understands. And beneath all of that, in the way certain things are known without being stated, there was the other thing about Kang Jae-Won. The thing that explained the room reorganizing itself around him. The thing behind the mother's stiffened posture when she spotted him across the terrace. I stood with the card in my hand and looked at the woman who had told her friends I was diligent for an African. The afternoon light was still warm. The music was still playing. And I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Not anger, not sadness, something quieter and more durable than either. The speeches began at 3. The best man, a warm man named Woo Jae-Huk, told a story about the groom that made everyone laugh twice and tear up once. Exactly the right ratio. The maid of honor spoke about the bride with genuine warmth that could not be faked. Then an older relative gave the long wandering speech that belongs at every wedding, which everyone endured with the same patient smile. And then Kang Jae-Won stood. The room settled before he said a word. Not the way it settles for an MC. The way a body of water settles when something large has entered it. Deep, recalibrating, total. He spoke for 5 minutes. He was warm in a way that surprised the room. He told a story about the groom that was funny and clearly true. At the end, he paused and said he wanted to take a moment outside his prepared remarks. He looked briefly toward the catering tent. At the staff. At us. Celebrations like this are built by people whose names we do not always know. I want to say, with everyone here as witness, that their work carries the same dignity as the work of anyone in this garden. At the family table, the mother's applause started 4 seconds late. I counted. Nana appeared at my elbow, eyes wide. "Who is that man?" she whispered. "Someone important," I said. "How important?" I touched the corner of the card in my apron pocket. "I am still working that out," I said. That was not entirely honest. I was beginning to understand precisely how important he was. What I was working out was what to do with that understanding. The careful version of me, built across 8 months of invisible work and 3 years of putting herself back together, said to put the card away and move slowly. That version had learned that visible hope was expensive, that reaching for things had costs, not always predictable. But there was another version of me. One that had been very quiet for a long time, the one who ran an event company at 26. Who coordinated events for 300 guests and moved through rooms always 5 minutes ahead of everything. That version had looked at the service entrance on her first day and known, without words, that it was a sentence someone else was writing about her. And she had never, not once in 8 months, fully believed that sentence was true. The reception wound down as the sun dropped over the harbor. The strings of lights came on slowly, section by section, and the garden moved from gold to warm amber in the way that makes any space feel like a memory forming in real time. Guests drifted toward the exit in pairs with the loosened goodbyes of people who have had enough champagne to feel genuine about things they might handle more carefully tomorrow. I was breaking down the beverage table when the mother came to the catering area for the first time all day. She moved through the space like someone conducting an inspection, her eyes moving across cleared tables and stacked linens, looking for something wrong. I knew that look. I had seen it every week for 8 months. She reached me and stopped. "You did well today," she said. "Not a compliment. An assessment. A thing you say to a tool that performed as expected." "Thank you," I said. She was already looking past me at the glassware. "The agency will confirm your extra Saturday rate." She said it to the glassware. Then she walked back through the main entrance, the wide one with stone steps and rose bushes on either side, without looking back. I watched her go. I called the number the next morning at 9. Not because I had decided anything grand, because I had been awake since 5, had spent 4 hours talking myself into and out of it, and had simply run out of reasons to keep waiting. The phone rang twice. A woman answered, calm, professional, the voice of someone who managed communications for a living and gave nothing extra away. She asked my name. She said Mr. Kang was expecting my call. That startled me enough that I said out loud, to a stranger on the phone, "He was?" She said yes, and that he would like to meet that morning if I was available. I said I was. She gave me a business district address. A building I had passed on the bus twice a week for 8 months without ever having a reason to enter. I changed out of the gray uniform. I put on the blue dress I had not worn since Accra, the one I bought when the event company's first big contract came through. I had packed it in a moment of either hope or stubbornness and had never decided which. I looked at myself in the small mirror above my dresser. The building had 40 floors and a lobby that smelled like cool air and the kind of money that belongs only to places where serious things are decided. The desk attendant called upstairs before I reached her, which meant someone had already told her I was coming. She gave me a visitor badge without asking for identification. The 32nd floor had a different quality, quieter, the maintained quiet of a space deliberately kept that way. A man in a gray suit met me at the elevator and walked me to a room that was mostly window, with Busan harbor spread below in midday light. Kang Jae-Won was there, standing at the window with tea, and he turned when I entered with the same unhurried ease I had seen the day before. He gestured to the chair across from his and sat, beginning without preamble. "I looked into your background last night," he said. "Your event company. What happened with your business partner? Your qualifications?" He paused. "You should not be working as an attendant." I held his gaze. I know that. Something moved in his expression. Barely, quickly. He had not expected me to say that without apology. Good, I thought. Let him be surprised. What he offered was specific. KJW Group was launching a hospitality division, boutique event spaces across Busan and Seoul, the first of their kind under his portfolio. He needed someone to lead operations, not a coordinator, not a manager with layers above her. Director of operations, her name on the letterhead, her decisions in the room. He had been searching for 7 months. "Why me?" I asked. "You managed a 300-person event independently at 26 with no institutional backing," he said. "Yesterday you ran the full logistics of that wedding, with no credit, no recognition, no support, and not one thing went wrong." He held my gaze. "The question I ask when hiring at this level is not whether someone can do the job. It is whether they have done harder things without being asked and without being thanked. You have. Repeatedly." I sat with that. Not the job offer, the way he said it, like my history was not a list of setbacks but a clear record of capability. I had not heard my own story told that way before, not by anyone else, and in the honest quiet of my worst nights, not even by myself. "I need 2 days to think," I said. He nodded without hesitation. "Take 3. I did not take 3 days. I called Nana that evening and told her everything. She was quiet for a long time when I finished. Then she said, 'Zara, if you say no to this, I will never speak to you again.' I laughed, the kind that comes from a place deeper than humor, when pressure has built so long that relief and absurdity arrive together and you cannot do anything but let it out. I called the number the next morning. The same calm woman answered. Paperwork would be ready and an onboarding meeting set for Thursday. I hung up and sat in my small rented room, the one that had been my whole world for 8 months, and looked at the gray uniform folded on the chair. I thought about the service entrance, the hedge half hiding it, the corridor smelling of cleaning products and cold stone. The way the mother had said it, the guests do not need to see the staff, like visibility was something to be rationed based on importance, like some people were meant for the side door and some for the front, and that was simply the order of things. I stood up. I picked up the gray uniform. On Thursday, I returned to the KJW building in the blue dress. The onboarding took 3 hours. A legal team, a benefits outline, and a conversation with the head of the new hospitality division who asked 3 questions about event logistics and 1 about my management philosophy. I answered honestly instead of in the careful language of someone performing competence for an audience. She read my answer slowly. Then she said something in Korean that the translator beside her rendered as, she actually knows what she is talking about. Kang Jae-Won appeared briefly at the end to confirm everything had gone well and to tell me my first project would be introduced at the following week's division meeting. He shook my hand. His expression was as it always was, still, careful, giving away exactly what he chose and nothing more. But as he turned to leave, he paused. "One more thing," he said. Effective immediately, KJW Group's event venues operate with a single entrance for all guests and all staff. Front door. Always. He said it without turning back. He walked out. I stood in the meeting room with the harbor through the window. I felt something I had not felt in 3 years. Not relief, not victory, something quieter and more permanent than either. What happened to the mother came slowly, the way real consequences always come, without drama, without a single moment you could point to and say this is where it turned. KJW Group's new hospitality division was launching exclusive partnerships with Busan's prominent families. The family had applied for a partnership 6 months earlier and been placed on the waiting list. 3 weeks after I joined as director of operations, their application went to review. I was not the one who decided, that sat with a separate team at a higher level. But the review found that the family's household employment practices did not align with KJW Group's partner standards around the equal treatment and dignity of all employees. The application was declined. A single formal letter, polite, correct, professionally airtight. I heard about it from the division coordinator, who mentioned it in passing during a scheduling meeting. I wrote it in my notebook. But after the meeting ended, I sat quietly for 1 moment. I thought about a gray corridor and a bread basket and words said without lowering a voice. I thought about a man who stepped through a service entrance, not because he was told to, but simply because he saw no reason any door should mean more than the practical business of getting Nana called me 3 weeks after I started. She had left the agency and found a hotel placement, not a private household, and she sounded lighter. More room in her voice. She asked how things were going. I told her about the first major project, a corporate event for 250 guests, 6 weeks out, already the most complex thing I had managed since Accra. She listened the way she always did, close, real, without pretending. "Zara," she said, "do you think the mother knows where you are now?" I thought about it. She might. There are not many Ghanaian women running operations for KJW Group. Nana laughed, the deep kind, from the chest. "And what do you feel about that?" I looked at my desk. The city through my office window, not a corridor gap or a hedge space, but a proper window, full view, eye level with all of it. I thought about the blue dress and the card placed on the table so the choice was mine. I thought about a man who stepped through a service entrance because the front was taking too long and saw nothing in that choice but the most direct path forward. I have been thinking about the woman who arrived in Busan 8 months before any of this happened. She was 31 years old. She was brilliant, and she knew it, and she had spent 3 years working hard not to show it, because someone had taken that quality and used it against her and left her holding the damage alone. She put on a gray uniform because it was what was available. She walked through a service entrance because someone told her to. She pressed tablecloths and carried trays and smiled at people who looked right through her, telling herself it was temporary until that word had nearly lost its shape. I think about what it cost her. Not the money or the time, the quieter cost. The energy she spent in the small hours convincing herself she was still the person who had built something real at 26. The moments she folded herself down because folding felt safer than standing. The version of herself she kept stored like a good dress, waiting for a moment safe enough to wear it again. She was not rescued. Kang Jae-Won did not rescue me. What he did was see me clearly, without the filter of the uniform or the entrance or the woman who had pre-decided my worth.